After seeing those things that I have described previously, I immediately found myself at the edge of an enclosed garden. The enclosure was made of minerals and other precious things from the earth. Its form was lighted by thin threads of copper, as spider silk. Although I was on the outside, I saw above the enclosed garden beautiful pine and olive trees. The sound of diverse birds and animals could be heard through a small gate, worn and rusted by centuries of waiting. Grass and other green plants grew at the edge of this gate but did not grow on the place from which I stood. Outside the mineral and copper walls, a great and dry wilderness extended in all directions. The sky was red, and the clouds were like streaks of the dark blood of the planets. The ground had the appearance of dried mud, cracked and hard like grapes. All around the walls a great host of individuals walked aimlessly. In their hands they held objects of contemplation and shook like trees in the breeze. They once had fear and desire to enter the enclosed garden, but became distracted by their objects of contemplation. They would walk into one another and change their direction accordingly, saying nothing or little but continuing to focus on the object within their grasp. There was not a sense of dread nor hope, but instead a great cloud of distraction had descended upon these individuals, whose thought they had lost within their hands. Their motion across and around this enclosed garden had an effect upon the dried mud of the ground, and the presence of a depression upon the ground, as if a ditch or channel, was made known to me. Certainly, this great host had been here for many revolutions of the moon. In this multitude I saw faces that were familiar to me, friends and acquaintances in my waking life, and individuals whose description I recalled from the books of history through which I had received some small education. My attempts to garner their attention were left unmet, with their pallid faces unchanged by my petitions. As I moved through this crowd, to my absolute horror I found myself as if I was looking through a mirror or still pond. Indeed, an individual with my very same appearance became known to me. Their eyes were sunken and tired, unblinking from an eternity of contemplation of their hands and object. Here, however, my petitions for attention were slowly met with careful and effortful motion. As I put the most pressing concerns regarding my soul's own status and fate in this trench of distraction, I suffered to inquire about the garden, and why this multitude was gathered in such a fashion. My anemic reflections spoke to me, and told me that the great host of individuals were led to this garden, and were told that they would be able to gain entrance into the enclosed garden. This host of fools that we have found ourselves in waits near this great enclosure, as the blood-red sky beats us with rain which hurts the flesh, and the wind puts dust in our mouths. But the suffering we endure is for entrance into the enclosed garden, which we were promised a portion of. As we wait we turn only to our objects of contemplation for sustenance. For those within the garden share with us visions of the garden through them, and by seeing them our faith is restored. And truly those within the garden show kindness to us through these objects. For there are those at the far side of the enclosure, where there is no gate or opportunity to see a fraction of the beautiful grass and other green plants, or hear the precious sounds of birds and animals, which wait on the other side of these walls made of minerals and precious things. These souls, on the far side of the exterior, do not have objects of contemplation, and although their flesh is not pallid and they cover their mouths when the wind comes, they are truly cursed as they cannot receive the visions of the interior of the garden. We pity them, for they are cut off from images of the secret knowledge and hidden pleasures which lay within. Yet still those within the garden have knowledge of them and inscribe their knowledge of them within their secret language of numbers. For as they are observed and recorded, they are truly cursed through their inability to communicate with those inside the garden, as we can. Their petitions are lost in the wind, while ours are captured by the objects of our contemplation. As these terrible things were made known to me, my thoughts and my eyes became transfixed upon the pine and olive trees, which I could see above the wall of minerals, precious things, and copper threads. I inquired to my gruesome reflection what could be found within the garden. As I did so, they drew their object of contemplation closer to their breast, with great love and devotion. through this object I have seen great and beautiful things. In the first days of our arrival here, when the sky was not red and the rain did not harm the flesh, I often looked to the pine and olive trees which we can see over the enclosure. But as the sky turned and the rain hurt, our objects became more comforting to look upon. I have seen visions of saffron and grapes, which we know to correspond to the sun and to the moon, and therefore to the constellations Leo and Cancer. I have seen visions of ginger and tulips, which correspond to Mars and Venus, and in turn to Aries and Scorpio, and Taurus and Libra. I have seen visions of flaxseed, honeysuckle, and morning glory, which correspond to Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn, and in turn to Gemini and Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces, and Capricorn and Aquarius. From this garden all influence from the constellations and from the numbers of the chosen communicants flows. Those inside fashion circlets from morning glory and flaxseed and eat grapes with saffron spices. A beautiful fountain is the jewel within the center of the garden and provides life-giving waters to those within. At this moment, immediately the gate near where I spoke to my reflection opened. A blinding light spilled forth from the interior of the garden, and suddenly I felt my spirit and my body move within the garden as I looked upon the light. There I found that my reflection had disappeared, and the great host of individuals was replaced by a host of mechanical birds and animals which produced sounds from peculiar instruments. The petitions of those outside the walls made of minerals, precious things, and copper thread were left unattended and unconsidered. I saw then before me the chosen communicants, preparing messages and letters to the twice-faced scribe which I saw in an earlier vision.